Good afternoon. My name is Suzette, and I will be your conference operator today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the Networking in Your Community conference call. All have been placed on mute to prevent background noise. After speakers' remarks, there will be a question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. Thank you. I will now turn the call over to Ms. Sharon Rabb. Please go ahead, ma'am.
And welcome, everyone, to Networking in Your Community. I'm Sharon Rabb with Campaign Consultation, and we are a training and technical assistance provider for the Corporation for National Community Service. This workshop is part of a series of monthly web shops designed to provide tips and assistance to help you navigate your VISTA service and perform the work you have been assigned by your organization. Before we get too far into this, there are a large number of people on this call, and I would like to ask you to limit your chat comments to topic-related questions and answers. I know it's nice to meet everyone, but we're pretty much be assumed that we are from all over the country. Also, if you would look on your lower right-hand side of your screen, you'll see that there are a few questions that we would like you to answer. You can do those for the next few minutes, and this poll will help us know where people are in the topic of networking. To get started, relationships are the cornerstone to success in your VISTA experience, and you can have major career impact with the right connections. Building strong networks can profoundly affect how successful you are in building community partnerships, fundraising, community development, and more. Understanding who you are and what you want to accomplish and the pathways to get you there is the foundation of network building. It's not introducing yourself to random people. It's about knowing what impact you want to have in this world and how to cultivate relationships to build social capital and continually pivot to meet your goals. This engaging webinar is designed specifically for national service community members and will offer a fresh lens and pragmatic approaches to building networks for maximum impact. This call today, we have myself, Sharon Rabb, and Denise Friedman. And Denise is Director of Career Development and Alumni Services and at the Trachtenberg School of George Washington University. Sherry is our project specialist, and she will be doing technical assistance for this webinar. And Robin Stegman is also on the line, and because of the large volume of people, she will be monitoring the chat and helping direct answers and help you solve your problems if you should have them. For the most part, you should direct your questions to everyone, as there's a good opportunity to answer each other's questions in this chat. I'm going to turn it over to Shannon, who will explain some things about this web shop and how to use this tool.
Great, so much, Sharon. I wanted to make sure that everyone had the tips for using today's WebEx and joining today's presentation. If you lose the internet connection or get drop of the phone line, you can rejoin the same way that you joined the first time. So you can go ahead and redial the phone number or just reconnect on the internet. That was provided. Keep in mind that your voice will be muted throughout today's presentation, but that we will be opening the line up for questions later in the presentation. So we are unable to hear you. And then a lot of you are already using the chat feature to the right. So as Sharon said earlier, please be sure to sort of limit your conversation to the content of this webinar and sort of topic specific, as there are so many people on today's webinar. I want to make sure that we can respond to questions as they arise. And the conference call number is listed on the screen, as is the passcode. So make sure that you have that, because you do need to join via your phone to hear the audio portion of today's presentation. Great.
And now I would like to introduce Andy King, who is the specialist for AmeriCorps Vista, and he will tell you about professional development.
Thank you so much, Sharon, and thanks, Shannon, for the guide on how to use our tool today. Welcome, everyone. As Sharon said, my name is Andy King, and I work in the VISTA training unit. My year is to develop trainings like this one, to develop the content and materials that are used in the pre-service orientation, and my work is focused around building the VISTA campus. On behalf of VISTA, I want to thank you for joining us today and for investing in your own professional development. We see VISTA year as one not only of continuing development and capacity building for the community and for the organizations where you serve, but it's also a year of building your own capacity and building your own skills. So I'm glad you've made time in your busy schedule to join us today and to invest in personal and professional development. Now it's my distinct pleasure to introduce to you Denise Friedman, who will be leading our session today. As Sharon mentioned, Denise is a career development specialist in alumni services. She's actually the director of career development and alumni services at George Washington University here in Washington, D.C. She herself is a former VISTA, and she has run several different VISTA projects. She really has a passion for professional development and career development, and I think that'll come across really clearly as you hear from her today. She's also a great advocate for AmeriCorps, for VISTA, and a big proponent for alumni of AmeriCorps programs to continue involvement. In fact, serves on the National Advisory Board for AmeriCorps alums. So I'm going to turn over to you now, Denise, and to lead us in about today's agenda.
Thank you so much, Andy. I am, as you said, really excited to be doing this, and I think my most important qualification is that I am a former VISTA, and that, I think, is, to me, one of the most important things. So hopefully we'll be able to share some good information today. So first, this is just a quick overview of the agenda, and so as you can see, we will be covering a lot of good stuff and try to make this as interactive as possible and engage all of you in this conversation. So I do want to let you know that there'll be a lot of resources that I'm going to be talking about today, and after the presentation, you will be getting information with all these resources, so don't worry about frantically trying to write everything down while we are going through everything. So I am going to get started. If I can ask for the host to pass over the ability for me to advance my slides, that would be terrific.
Yes, Denise, I just need to save the poll really quickly. And then,
great.
Otherwise, it won't let me pass.
Okay, so we will do that in a second. So while we're doing that, while that's getting passed over to me, just kind of letting you all know, I'm sure people right now have a lot of things in their head of what they're thinking about what networking is. So before we go into that, I want to talk about what networking isn't. So I'm sure many of you have been to networking events and have had these kind of thoughts going through your head as you are networking. You're sitting, you're talking to somebody, you're bored out of your mind, but you never know. You're desperate for a job. You're in the car and they better follow back with you. This is what networking is not. This is not what we're going to talk about today. This is not what I believe. I'm sure you have also had this experience where you feel networking is all about smiling when you really feel like smiling, or someone having a fake smile at you. So again, this is not what networking is. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about what it is about. And what I want to talk to you about is it's not about networking. To me, I don't even like that term. Actually, to me, it's about building a network. We're going to talk about, obviously, the hidden job market. We're going to talk about jobs. You know that that's a concern for many people, like after VISTA. But what we're really going to look at today is this is about a continuum. This is about building social capital. Many of you have just started your year of service. You're going to be doing projects. You want to be known for your expertise. You want to build connections in the community. You want to partner with people. This is what building a lifelong network is. Former VISTA, I know it is all about sustainability. What are you creating that's going to sustain itself so when the next person comes in, this can continue to build? This is social capital. It is an ongoing effort. This is not, okay, I need to go find a job, or I need an internship, I'm going to go out and network. No, that's not networking. That's just a short-sighted approach to something. That's not building a strong foundation. So we're talking about it for big picture. Now let's talk about what building your network is. It's everything around the professional development, professional profile, political leverage, community engagement. And it's really important to keep in mind it is all connected. This is not about transactional relationships. This is about transformational relationships that are deep and long-term. So let's get started with talking about it. First, you need to know yourself. For all of you who are sitting there at your desks and have a pen, I know some people are doing this, doing some mobile devices, so they might be out and about, so if you don't have a pen, I want you to just take a quick second and think about, if I was to ask you that question, what is your biggest strength? What would you write down? What are things that would immediately come to your mind? What are you going to be bringing into the networking? Hopefully you're writing some ideas down. Hopefully it's not like this guy who clearly has just very big arms. Maybe if I asked this question and asked you about your greatest weaknesses, you'd be able to write for days. Writing about your strengths is much harder. Knowing yourself is harder. You can't start networking until you actually know yourself. So that's why I start from this place. I'm sure many of you have heard about the elevator pitch. Well, the reason why I chose this cartoon, because this is what I feel like an elevator pitch is all about. Like, let me throw something hard and fast at you. That's not, to me, what this is all about. And I don't like the term. In all my years, I've never gotten into an elevator and delivered a pitch. It's not my approach to it, and it's not what I would recommend. Instead, this is what I recommend. I like to think about it as file folders. Think about, in different folders, your strengths, education, abilities. What's the reality of the market? How do you knowledge about this? And then really thinking about what combination of this that makes you unique, compelling, something that people are going to remember. And then I always think about, we all do Google searches, and what Google searches do is you just quickly go through all your files. This is what you should be thinking about versus a canned elevator pitch is having a lot of knowledge about who you are, and depending on a situation, being able to hit a different type of search to get the right results, to be able to know yourself in this way and pull that out in a way that makes it compelling. So it's really important that your file drawers are not empty, because if someone asks you who you are and you don't have anything in there to say, you got nothing to add. And it's also important to know that your files are not overflowing and you're going on and not really thinking about who your audience is and being relevant. I'm going to show you as an example. So here's an example of, a bit of a conversation that you might have when you meet somebody. Well, I don't know about you guys, but to me, that is really, really boring. It's flat. There's nothing engaging about it. Instead, trying something like this. You're building, as you can see, where's that personal connection? You have a personal connection there with somebody. What's their role? What connection around the work that they're doing? So remember, whenever you're talking to people, it's not about you. It's about the relationship. It is about them. Same thing, I'm sure a lot of you, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, are on LinkedIn. When people do the LinkedIn and you try to match up with a new person, I personally, pet peeve of mine is when somebody sends me a generic, I'd like to add you to my professional network. If the person didn't really think about who they are, what's the connection. Taking the time to send that professional, I met you at this, or if someone sends it to me and finds me on LinkedIn after this, which hopefully I'll get lots of connections after this. After hearing your webinar, I wanted to connect with you, yada, yada. You put something in there and you make it personal. You're establishing the relationship. We talked first about know yourself. Now we need to talk about, you have to know who and what is happening. We'll first talk about online, because you need to understand this. Talk first about completing a LinkedIn profile. am a huge fan of LinkedIn. I was just reading, there's Forbes actually just had an article about it, about how many millions of users that they have, and it's like, I think there's 2 users a second coming on. It is everywhere now. Recruiters are using it. It's incredible, the process. So get a LinkedIn profile because you need to know what's happening online. And I suggest make it easier for yourself and look at other people's profiles that you like. Don't feel like you need to recreate the wheel. Some other things about knowing who and what is online. Get e-newsletters. Choose to get the organizations that you're really interested in. Set up Google to get news alert. Obviously, people know about Twitter feeds. Some new ones. More employers are starting to use Facebook, YouTube, community groups if you're looking to partner with an organization and you want to find out what's going on, what conferences are happening. Pinterest is another one that people are doing now to post information. This is fairly new to me, but it's apparently very, very addicting. Definitely join some great groups. Again, I'll send you all some of these links so you don't have to do this, but choose appropriate memberships to be a part of. There's often free, low cost for students. LinkedIn, follow the people and follow organizations that you want to know about, want to know what's happening in the community. So if that wasn't enough to convince you, what's happening online, hopefully the statistics will. Everything is pointing to the fact that recruiters are using online for hiring. So again, this conversation about building your network is not just about finding your job, but hopefully it will convince you the power of online in terms of building your network for employment. So we talked about online. That's one thing, but to me, honestly, nothing beats who and what is happening in person. So be thinking about what are you going to. I highlighted the word relevant because you don't need to go to every event. I personally am not a big fan of the generic networking events because often you're going with the same people who are in the same situation as you. I encourage you to really think about going to ones that are more aligned with what you're doing with people on all levels. This is a great one that's across the country, Yon Nonprofit Professional Network. There's chapters everywhere. If you're not a part of it, I encourage you to be a part of it. They have targeted specific topics. Obviously, how can I not push AmeriCorps alums? You engage with them now. A lot of AmeriCorps alums chapters actually have events for both current members and alums. People understand what you're going through and can really connect. Start going to some of that. And then here are some other suggestions. We go to events at, I recently moved from Boston. The Boston Foundation would hold an event, often for free. The people who would go to those events were the people who were the movers and shakers in the community that you wanted to connect with. So it's an opportunity for you to build relationships with people. Then when you're writing a grant, you might know then somebody at that foundation because of a relationship you built. About professional development and also informational interviewing. Everybody knows about informational interviewing, so I want to spend a few minutes talking about that. About 20 to 30-minute conversations that you might have with people. Informational interview is a technical term. It's really just building a relationship. So the example of informational interviewing, often is what someone's thinking in their head during the informational interview. This is not what you want to be doing. It's not how you build authentic relationships. So what is? It is more of networking conversations. In this picture, I included the same picture sitting across the table, but it doesn't have to be this way. This can happen at a community event. This can happen at a volunteer training where you're building relationships with people in a positive way. It's not cross-examination where you're not just sitting there, drilling them with questions. It's engaging in a conversation, having done your research in advance to know who somebody is, finding commonalities. Some people think when you're, all vistas are younger, but say if you're younger and you're right out of college, you might be thinking, what do I have as a common interest? It can be personal, it can be professional. You might have grown up in the same area. You might have the same passion for doing, environmental work. So find those commonalities. Really taking the time to think about the questions you're asking instead of the generic questions, again, strengthens you and making sure that the relationship you're building is authentic. You'd be amazed at the number of times it's happened to me and people that I know that these networking conversations have ultimately turned into significant things, whether it's job offers, whether it's partnerships. So it's nothing to be taken lightly. Remember, it's just planting seeds because you don't actually know what's going to happen. So know doing what is happening selectively. We know what our schedules are like and what the reality is. This is going to give us extra hours in the day. So I wanted to share with you some tips that I've learned through all of my years about just different ways to kind of manage all of this. One is thinking about super connectors. Many of you have started in your communities, and you might have already heard this, is that, if you're looking to find who the people are in the community, who everybody knows, you ask 10 people for 10 people's names, you're not going to get 100 names. You're probably going to get anywhere from about 8 to 12 names of people who are the real community connectors. Connect with them. Find out, if you're trying to gain influence and find out what's happening in, you're trying to get some understanding of what's happening in legislature, connect with a lobbyist, connect with a journalist. Fundraisers are often people, from the development field who know a lot of the players. So connect with them. It's going to help you maximize your time. Be what I call a professional flirt. It's like when it's flirting, you don't want to put everything out there in the beginning. You want to leave somebody wanting more. So if you meet somebody and you're at a networking event or you're at a conference and that was the speaker and you see this long line of people after you, you leave them with this was great talking to you. I see there's more people who want to talk with you. Could we exchange cards and can I follow up? It enables you a way to reconnect with them by not having it all happen at the first stage and the first time you meet them. So another advice is come early or come late. You can't go to all events. If there's a networking event before, you might go for the networking event at the beginning of a presentation. If you're working late that day, come to the last half an hour of presentation to the networking event afterwards. Don't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get there for the whole event, so I'm not going to do it at all. Just be selective with it. Another piece of advice, the final one on this page, is trying to manage who you're in touch with in person, who you're in touch with online. Sometimes some people, it's better to be in person. Sometimes it's better to be online. Some people have to go between both. But don't feel like, oh my gosh, everybody I have to do 100% in. You really want to think about what the relationship is, what is the appropriate venue, who is that person. If it is somebody that's an executive director of a large organization, you might not be able to maintain an in-person contact with them all the time, but you certainly can stay in touch online and you can certainly follow up with them and reconnect. A little bit more, one more tip about selectively. I think we all live in the world where we feel like we cannot get out from under of our emails. I feel like I spend my entire day doing emails. And when I first started my year of Vista, now I'm really dating myself, we had the first email system, which was a black screen with white letters. That was email when I started and did my Vista in 1994. Times have changed. So one suggestion I have for people, really easy thing, is either set up an alternative email address or automatic email filters for a lot of those things that you might be getting, those e-newsletters, different types of follow me on LinkedIn. Otherwise, I find if you don't, I don't know about you, but I hit delete way too much because I feel overwhelmed by the newsletters. If you put in an alternative source and say, I'm going to check this every week, then you can help manage things differently. We talked about who and what is happening. Let's talk about sharing what you know. A really valuable part of building a network, particularly when doing community building. First, think about with this two-way street, being a connector, not a collector. If you collect things, they collect dust. If you connect things, you add value. I recently connected two people in the community. One person is the executive director of a really large nonprofit in the area. Another one runs a program called Pro Inspire, which helps get business consultants into the nonprofit community. I don't really have anything to add to either of these two groups themselves. There's nothing I can do for them, but I connected the two of them because I knew that they would add value to each other. So I'm seen as adding value even though I'm not really doing anything for either of them. So in other ways you can do that, connect to people who are valuable. If you have, insider invites, somebody hears about something. I was just talking to someone the other day and Senator Franken, we're here in D.C., was having a porridge breakfast for people from Minnesota. Another person that she knew was also from Minnesota, hadn't heard about this invite. It was a really small select of people. She invited them. There's a connection there. You're adding value by doing something like that. Also thinking about traditional and social media, there's some great websites where you can start to add value. sometimes when you're just starting out in your career, you feel like you don't know a lot to add. That is a huge myth, and I'd love you to not walk away from this conversation perpetuating that myth. You add a lot of value. You are in the community. A lot of times people who are doing policy that you're implementing through your community work don't actually know what's going on in the community. You know a lot, and really these are great ways to share what you know. Somebody, slideshare.net is where people post presentations, PowerPoint presentations. Got a job out of something that she had posted on there, got interest from someone. It's amazing how when you're just positioning yourself and sharing what you have to add, how people really start to come on board and you start to seen as an expert in something. There are ways to share what you know on this two-way street. Very highly encourage professional volunteer opportunities. And I know some of you might be groaning in your offices now thinking, but you're a Vista, you're doing a lot of this. This is a way to gain some additional skills for your resume. It's also a tremendous way to build up your network. And I'm really talking about higher level opportunities, something more than just kind of the direct service. So here are just a few sites that are really valuable for it. There's many more. There's a lot of local ones, like I put the Catch a Fire because that's in New York City. But if you look in your own community, people are doing this. Again, these links will be shared with you later. Be a speaker. Going to conference. There's a lot of ways that you can do this, that people want to hear what you have to say. A new trend that's been happening is emerging professional groups, advisory groups for people who are younger, young boards. So it's something else you want to think about how to share. So, to share what you know, and to that term selectively. You'll see coming back to that. Being mindful of how many hours we all have in the day is thinking about how you're sharing information with people you're sharing it with. Back to that executive director, you're not going to be wanting to email them every day. You're going to want to think about when you can send them information, when you can make an introduction, really thinking about the people that you're serving and the people you're working with, doing it appropriately. And let people know what's happening with you. Once again, you know what word's going to come up? Selectively. As you all know, is an amazing tool. It can also be a devastating tool to people. We've heard this all the time. So really you need to know what your digital footprint is, and you need to monitor your online presence. You need to know if someone has a similar name than you and something's up there that people are checking out. We've all heard these stories. And it has to do with not just finding a job, but a little while ago I found out that a quote of mine was included on a website of an organization that I actually didn't support the work that they were doing. And I had just Google searched myself and found out a quote of mine was on there, so it looked like that I was supporting them. That can damage my professional profile in terms of how I'm viewed in the community of my work. And it's really important to just be mindful of that. So again, just a couple sites to check out. How do you leverage your network to help you? We've talked about knowing yourself. We've talked about knowing what's going on and sharing. Making sure that you're setting this up selectively, making it easy for someone to say yes and to say no. The study that I found that was really interesting that just recently came out that said people underestimate by as much as 100% how much people are willing to help them. I find people have a really tough time reaching out, whether it's on LinkedIn, where it's somebody who you want to be able to serve on a panel with you, whether it's somebody you want to write a grant with, do a community project with. People underestimate this. So don't be afraid to ask for connections, to network, whether it's for a job opportunity or to partner. Just remember that 100% of people, or people underestimated by 100%. Now, let's talk about how to build and manage your network for success. There's a couple different levels I want you to think about. This is allies. This is a core group of people you want to have. I often call them my board of advisors. These are people that they can be peers, but I often recommend that you have people who have maybe been out for longer than you, maybe former professors, former colleagues. These are people who you can trust unconditionally, who you can go to in the throes of a career crisis, professional crisis, who you know are always going to be there and are going to champion with you. These are people sometimes that you end up doing work with together. The next level is alliances. So these are often people who you have a mutually beneficial relationship with, but you don't know as well. These relationships where you often need to be continuing to cultivate them. They're close to you, but they're not as intimate as, say, allies. Very important to have a strong group in there. The affiliations is where people often underestimate the power. These are often called weaker ties. And it was interesting, there was a study done a while ago that said that 82% of people found their jobs through weaker ties. I often think it's the people who we know right next to each other. You know, these are my allies and alliances, find jobs through them. They often know the same people as you do. It's the people that are in your affiliations group, the next tier out, these weaker ties, that maybe you don't connect with them on a regular basis, have access to new information because they're not in your immediate circle. And finally, there's the extended network. This is a group called what you call consequential strangers. These are people where you just meet, and it's incredible to me the impact of that group when you do studies on this, particularly around community building and networking. And there's not just the power of what they know, there's a power of creativity. Clean Bank, they did a study that does microfinance, and what they did is they found that when they extended the community to include weaker ties, this group that was doing microfinance in these rural communities, all of a sudden the solutions got more creative. So think about that, how that does and works for you, is you're going to be talking, say, to your allies and alliances because you're very comfortable with that group. You know you trust them. We're going to probably be coming up with the same answers on how to deal with whether it's something, your VISTA project or a job. But when you start to extend to affiliations and extended network, you start to reach out beyond that and you come up with ideas you hadn't even imagined. So a tip with this is to think about, you want your network, your professional network, to be both deep with allies and sometimes your alliances, and wide and shallow, your affiliations and your extended network. So narrow, deep, and wide and shallow. Shallow. I want it to be a shadow. So just to give you an example, you know, this is my in LinkedIn. So you look at this and you think, oh my God, 3 degrees away, I know 8 million people. Well, clearly I don't know 8 million people. But it shows the power of this. They had done this activity where they gave 60,000 participants in the United States some information. And here are 18 people around the world and I want you to figure out how to reach them with this information. So 6,000 people, only 18 targets, and found it really is the average distance. These targets were all over the globe, was 5 to 7 degrees of separation. So the thing about the Kevin Bacon 6 degrees of separation really is true. So you're that close to so many people all over the globe. However, it is true, but what's more powerful is thinking about the closeness of the connection, and really you need about a 3rd degree of connection to establish trust. So it's not the person with the most connections that wins, it's actually the person with the best connections that wins. And by win, I mean that wins for their own career. So thinking about this, it's, you know, you don't know who those connections are, and you want to be building relationships because everybody, you know, when you're having that trust, they're going to be wanting to support you. So let's move on. Okay, got some guy who's really happy. A lot of people have heard recently that they get that information that shows that happiness is contagious. By 1 degree, if the immediate social contact are happy, you are happy by 15%. Increase your happiness. 2nd degree contact is by 10. Even 3rd degree, I might not even know the person, increases by 6%. So imagine, if happiness is contagious, what about networking? What about who you're spending time with in those connections? Think out who you're spending the time with and who is successful in your community. Are you connecting with those people? Because if happiness is contagious, so is success. You increase your success by being with people who represent that. We're going to talk a little bit about LinkedIn just because I do think it is such a powerful, powerful tool. A lot of times when I've been on networking workshops and all this, they go, okay, I'm going to give you the usual laundry list of places to meet people, and this is what you're going to do, and it goes in a monotone voice like that, and I'm bored out of my mind. The reality is, there is no list I can give you. If you do all the work we just talked about building up yourself, knowing what's going on in the community, you're going to have those people. You're going to know those names. So I'm not going to give you that list because it would be short-sighted. I will talk about LinkedIn because it is an incredibly powerful tool for you to recognize how to find opportunities. So one thing to use in here is this advanced people search. Put people's name in a title. Look at their company. Look at current or past. You want to be highlighting a lot of this stuff and searching for people, in here, right in there, and find people to expand your network beyond what you ordinarily think. So do some of this. You find this, and you might say, okay, now what? Now what am I going to do? So find people that you want to connect with, and say you wanted to connect with this person. An amazing tool on LinkedIn is using this feature called Send in Mail, and it's just for you to get referred by somebody else. So if you can see this person is a second-degree connection for me, so I would click on Send in Mail, and I get introduced by someone I know. Create an opportunity for them to help me out and connect with them. So I would go through the list, decide who I know best, ask them to make an introduction, send it in an email, goes there. It makes it so easy for the other person to connect. So this is, I think, just an incredibly powerful tool. Search for organizations you're interested in. No matter what you're doing, it just helps you understand. If you're about to go to an event, search and see who you might know that works at that event. Okay, so we've done all this stuff. We're thinking about taking care of our network, and life gets in the way, and what happens? Your visit year ends, and you're searching for a job. You move, you get into a relationship, you start graduate school, and you don't have time to take care of your network. So these are some simple, easy things you can do, things that are manageable to do this while you are going through all of life, because networking, there is no beginning or end. You constantly want to just be aware of how am I building relationships with people that I find interesting, that are doing work that I find compelling. Easy way is to set it up to get LinkedIn and Twitter updates. Check them once a week, find the updates, send emails off to people. Congratulations on the new job. Saw that you were attending this conference. Really what I call easy wins. When you have a major professional or personal update, when you finish your year of service, when you have a new year of service, you move, you send this out to people. Again, you can do it en masse, but it stays people connected with you. You don't have to do it individually. Do a big group email. Another nice thing, easy to do, is just to let them know what's going on if you're going to a conference. Again, just easy wins. Saying thank you. When someone does a referral for you, make sure you thank the person making the referral. It is such a powerful tool that I'm amazed that people forget to do. It shows how considerate you are, and therefore someone wants to continue to help you out. Cards, again, another easy one. Thinking about that, when you don't have time to do this, sometimes you're sending loads and loads of emails, and it feels like it's just going into this vast void. One coffee can equal many emails. Go take someone out for coffee, And I know being Vista, you don't have a lot of money, but buy a cup of coffee. Maybe you don't get them to go to Starbucks and have the grande frappuccino, but a cup of coffee for $2. And doing that is face-to-face. There's a value in online, but there's a value in in-person engagement. Your excitement and your energy for the work you're doing will come across to somebody. So when you do all of this, very easy wins. All of a sudden, your network can come back to life. So it's probably better not to wait until the network totally dies. Just a few more things here. Just some easy ways to use to stay connected, to kind of manage a lot of this information. Some people like Excel spreadsheets and Outlook. Definitely, there are easy ways to do this in this day and age with online things. There's places like Connected HQ, kind of takes your LinkedIn, allows you to manage it a little bit more, put more contacts. So this is one great source. I actually just got started on this, and I like it. I like it a lot. So I'm pretty new on this. Super Jobber is another one. Love the name. So it's a name to say. Another one you can see allows you to be able to enter additional information to manage things. So kind of circling back, what builds your network? network is. I want to remember we started with thinking about that it's all connected. It's one thing. The people who present it in a bigger picture, who really think about themselves holistically, what is the impact that they want to have in the world? This is why so many of us do national services. We want to have an impact in the world. We don't want to just get a job. We want to transform things. When you connect them all together and build social capital, this is what you're doing. And I want to end with a little story. This was actually an experiment that was done where they asked people who define themselves as lucky and people who define themselves as unlucky, and gave them a newspaper. And it wants you to count the number of pictures in this newspaper, and tell us when you're done. So people started counting, and they were counting, and all of a sudden, on the second page of the newspaper, there was an ad, 2-inch ad that said, "Stop counting." People who were lucky actually saw the ad, went to the instructor, stopped counting. People who considered themselves unlucky, guess what they did? They counting. This ad was the second one they put later in the paper. And what happened to the people who described themselves as unlucky? They kept counting and counting and counting and counting. Why tell that story? Because if you go into thinking about this as quote-unquote networking, you are stuck counting pictures. You have these blinders on and you're missing the big picture. What you want to be doing is looking for opportunities everywhere. The people who define themselves as lucky, when you read this, is a great book called The Luck Factor by Richard Wiseman. The people who consider themselves lucky were people who saw opportunity everywhere, who were constantly building their own doors. If you're so busy looking for, okay, who's going to fund this project for me, and that's all I'm looking for is who's going to be my next donor, where's job coming from, who's going to actually be able to, give us the paint for this project that we're going to paint this school, you're missing the bigger picture, which is really what building a network in your community for yourself is about. It's about continually building your doors and figuring out where you want to go. So this is tools that are helpful for now while you're doing your service, and then moving forward. Wherever you end up going with this, if you build this network, it's going to take you there. The social capital is, nobody can ever take that away from you. That is how you build your professional and personal network for success and for impact, which is what we all do this for. That actually ends the presentation, and we're going to go into some Q&A.
Seth, if you could now, would you please open the line so that we can take questions from our attendees?
Yes, at this time, if you would like to ask a question, please press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad, and star 1. We'll pause just for a moment to compile the Q&A roster.
While he's compiling, I see that many of you have offered some very good ideas in the chat for networking and made some good comments. And these comments will also be sent to you along with the resources that have been mentioned in this webinar and the slides.
And your first question comes from Jill Bellmeyer.
Bill?
Yes, it's Phil. Yeah, I was just wondering, actually you kind of just answered my question, but I was actually just wondering if we were going to get the actual presentation emailed to us, or if we could get that emailed to us. Or
get the mailed to you, and about a week from now, the webinar will be posted on the Vista campus in the ongoing learning section under webinars for Vistas.
Oh, okay. All right. That question. Thank you much.
You're welcome. Questions for Denise?
Your next question is from Melanie Powell.
Melanie, hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, sorry. Well, I had a question about as far as the staying in contact points that you were making. I've been to a few different events that were basically networking events, and definitely received some cards, but it almost seemed compulsory. I was wondering if you had any sort of suggestions or pointers how you can tell that person to make that connection with wants to stay in contact with you?
That's great. It is often, and it's funny, I'm hearing more. There's been a lot of chatter on a lot of the career development websites about our business card's going to be obsolete with the whole online. You're right. It is. Sometimes people feel like, I'm just going to give this to you. Is this a way to get somebody away from you? You don't know 100%. I mean, hopefully you can try to read a situation. But what I always encourage to do is send an email to a person right afterwards. Something you want to do is on your back of a card, as soon as you meet somebody, write down a couple notes about them right there. Bring a small pen or pencil with you so you can jot down some notes. Send them an email afterwards. Try to do it immediately afterwards. Don't wait a couple days because people will forget. You can gauge from their response to you how engaged that they want to stay with you. Because often you'll get a sense if you don't hear from someone. And one other piece of advice with that, don't give up. If you email somebody you really want to stay in contact with and you don't hear from them at the first time, email them again. Back to that slide where I talk about where we're so overwhelmed by emails, people just get lost in there. If you can email a couple times, you don't hear back. But one thing I recommend is take that original email you sent to them, hit reply all so it's in the body of the message, and send them a really light touch follow-up. Just wanted to follow up on the email I sent you. It was great meeting you at that networking event. Would love to see if you had time for me to take you. We could meet up for coffee at some point. So, and again, the other thing to be aware of with this is where somebody is in their career, where they are in terms of, I don't like to use the word hierarchy, but sometimes it is. If someone is very well established in the community, is really well known, it might be harder for you to get them to respond to things. They might be someone who gives out business cards just quickly and easily and doesn't really respond to it. Don't give up hope. Some of those people are really wonderful with it, but being mindful of where they are and how much time that they have to give with this. And also, one last suggestion with that is if you meet someone that's high up, in your email to them, you might say to them, I'm not sure if you might have time to connect me or someone else at your organization. Go back to that slide of making it so easy for them to say yes and so easy for them to gently and carefully back out, but not totally say no to you, but put you to somebody else who might be more helpful.
You can still hear me.
I can hear you.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you. Your next question comes from Joy Mosenfelder.
Hi. One thing I've learned is that I shouldn't underestimate the value of networking at non-professional events. I'm in a community where there's a very active arts and entertainment scene, and I made some of my best connections for partners working on projects that I'm doing through my Vista organization, going out to things like open mic nights or free concerts in the community. It's a great way to meet some of the movers and shakers in the community because the same people who are involved in doing the development work are also involved in those scenes. So I get more bang for my buck giving out my business card at those kinds of events than I do at professional networking events.
That's a terrific point. I think that goes to what I was saying, that there isn't one list. Particularly when I was running a Vista project in Maine, I find very true in rural areas. I mean, it's true everywhere, but even more in rural areas in terms of the community all comes out. We would go swing dance and the community all comes out to those events. But it's why, you should always have your cards with you. And you can get things really cheaply done on Vistaprint if you want to have one. Vistaprint's a good name for this. If you want to have something created that is a little more personalized and reflective, particularly as you're starting to phase out of Vista when you're getting to the near your end of your career, of your year, and one of the things that have a little bit additional information, you can create more personalized cards that way. But that's a fantastic point.
Again, if you would like to ask a question, please press star and the number 1 on your telephone keypad. And your question comes from Anthony Gamma.
I was just curious, when you're out there networking, do you make a distinction between making personal friends and making a business contact?
You do need to be really mindful of that. You really do, about the fine line of making sure you read a situation well. It sounds funny, but sometimes I consider networking in some ways like dating. And, you want to be mindful of how you're building that relationship and really reading a person. There's certainly times where friendships will come out of professional networking, but you need to be mindful about where the other person is at and sometimes allow the other person to take the lead depending on that position. It's the same reason why, I do not, for example, I keep my Facebook and my LinkedIn very, very separate. My Facebook is very much my personal life. I don't do professional there at all, and my LinkedIn is my professional life. I'm sorry if I said that right. My Facebook is my personal life, and my LinkedIn is my professional life. So just be very mindful of that and allow the other person to kind of take the lead and kind of read the situation, because you don't want to go too far down a path and realize that maybe you went a little too personal with somebody when they really wanted to maintain it as a professional relationship.
And what if it's, and I guess like the other way around, I guess the same, like keeping people at a distance, also wanting to maintain connections?
Yeah, it's thinking about where you meet up with them. It's really funny, but, I've had people who've wanted to meet up with me at a happy hour where I'm like, being mindful, is this something that's veering on a personal, is this something veering on a date, versus a lunch, versus a breakfast meeting, versus having somebody having a conversation. So really, if someone's kind of pushing you in that way and you feel like, wow, they feel a little more personal, giving a little distance, taking a little longer to respond, still maintaining the relationship, meeting them for a professional lunch, bringing your notebook with you, and really you helping drive that conversation and keeping it focused on the professional sense.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Time for one more question, and then we will have a couple of questions that appeared on the chat.
And so your next question is from Rachel Bliss.
I would like some helpful hints on networking with competitors. I'm a photographer and like to kind of get some leftover business that other professional photographers don't have time for. But, I don't want to seem pushy or possibly taking business away from them. So if you could give some helpful hints, that'd be good.
When I think about when you ask that question, what immediately goes into my mind is remembering it's never about you and it's always about them. So what would be value added for somebody else? And this holds true for the example that you're talking about, but for the example anybody talks about and anybody thinks about, it's what is the value for them? Like what would they get out of that? If it helps them and helps them maintain relationships with their customers because they're not having to turn away business, then there's value added for them. If it's that you then can do the same for them and give them business in other ways, maybe you can help advertise for them. Maybe you know somebody at the newspaper where you can get free advertising for them, or you can help them in another way. Always thinking about it in a mutually beneficial reciprocity relationship. You always want to be thinking about it as a two-way street. So that's what I would suggest in those situations.
Thank you. That's a good idea.
Thank you much. We do have two questions on the chat, Denise, if you wouldn't mind spending a minute or two. One was, what is a good way to connect with national organizations?
Great. I'm sad that we only have a couple more minutes. I could have sat here and talked all day. I love talking about this stuff, particularly to VISTA members.
Well, put your questions in the chat, and we'll have to have a chance to answer them.
So on a national level, you want to think about what national organizations that maybe have local chapters. I was actually talking to a student about this the other day who was very interested in getting involved in Habitat for Humanity and thinking about where are the local chapters in your community. So that's one thing you first and foremost want to do is connecting on that level. You want to join their LinkedIn groups. In this day, their LinkedIn, their Pinterest, search them online and find all their social media. See how you can follow them, be connected to the chatter that they're doing. Another thing you want to look at is a lot of them have national conferences. Find out, I came from previously, I was at Share Strength that has a national conference. See if you can go to those. Sometimes they'll have regional conferences. Offer to go as a volunteer. That way you can go, stay with another VISTA member who lives in that community and go as a volunteer. You get there, you get to connect. Volunteering is a great way to go to a national conference, whether it's to get set up with a national organization. Another way to connect with the national organization is a lot of times they are looking for people to maybe build relationships in a local community. So reaching out to the organization themselves, finding people within that national organization that you want to build a relationship with, reaching out on LinkedIn and saying, I live in Austin, Texas, and I wanted to see if there was anything I could do to help build the national organization here. So again, thinking about what's the value added for the organization. Those are some quick and easy, looking at local chapters where they have it, going to the conferences, following them online, and then reaching out directly to people to see if there's ways that you can engage with them here in your own local community and do work value added for them. Doing a fundraiser, back to Share a Strength, where I came from, is they would often do local bake sales in communities. It's a way to build that network, particularly if you're looking to eventually get a job with them, you're already showing that connection. If you're looking to try to build a relationship for partnerships, you're probably going to want to do a little bit more than that, and you're going to want to do some informational interviewing and really networking with them, trying to get to the headquarters and actually meeting up with people if you can. Second best is on the phone, but if you can ever do it in person, it's always going to be, you're going to build the strongest relationship.
Denise, at this point, continue to ask questions in the chat, and we will try to get to those. But we're going to now take a look at what kinds of resources there are for networking on the Vista campus. And for that, I would like to introduce Andy King.
Thanks so much, Erin, and thanks, Denise, for all this tremendous information. And Denise has talked a lot about LinkedIn and some other online tools and ways to work using technology. And I'm going to just a few things available on the Vista campus so that you can, wait a second here, where did it go? So that you can network with other Vistas and Vista alumni right here within the Vista campus. So I'm sure you're very familiar with the campus. You click on the Vista section, and we have the area that's called Connect with Vistas. And not sure why it isn't responding. Is it?
I believe.
Within the Connect with Vista section, what I'm going to point out to you is the Vista map. This is a relatively newly launched feature of the campus, and it allows you to drop a pin where you're serving, and you can put information in about your service term, the name of the organization where you're serving, the type of project it is, whether it's financial literacy or bridging the digital divide or working on homelessness. So here we go. Within the Vista map, you can see where Vistas are located around the country. Also posted a bunch of resources available in each state, and you're able to post resources as well. But for today, I want to really focus on the people. So you can see in this view 1,733 Vista members, 20 Vista leaders, 206 Vista alumni, and then all these resources available. So the number keeps growing because we've recently launched it, and everybody has to go back into the campus, update their profile, and drop a pin in order for them to show. The numbers are only going to get better and better. I point out this find and filter feature. So right above the map is this bar that says find and filter, and it gives you the opportunity to search for particular types of users. So say you're only interested in currently active Vistas, you can click that. If you want to look in a particular state, I saw some chat, people, is any in New Mexico, who's in California? So you can find other Vistas in your state, in a city, a particular zip code. You can sort by program type. So say you're working specifically in disaster preparedness, you would find other Vistas whose projects are similar to yours and network across the country. So different ways that you can search. Thing you can do is this timeline that appears below the map has a slider, and you can go back in time. Say you wondered, back in the year 2000, Vista serving, who was in my community within the last 5 years, within the last 10 years. So even Vista alums who fit their term of service some number of years ago, you can find where they were, what they were doing, and then by looking at their record, you can find out where they are now and send them a message through the campus. So that's a very quick look at the map, and I'm going to go back now. I'll show you just a few other tools here on the Connect page. You're familiar with the Vista forums, and if you're not, I highly encourage you to take a look at them. So we have 6 different forums here on a range of topics. One is on living on the living allowance, called Recipes, Housing, and the Dollar Store. We have one for new vistas called From Lost to Found. The work is focused obviously on the type of work that vistas do. So if you're struggling around key entry work or doing some fundraising or an event together, that's the place to go to post your question, your challenge, get input and ideas from other vistas, share success stories and all of that. Stories of V are all about Vista and what Vista means to people. We have our own job board, and then the cafe is sort of the catch-all topic area. So I just want to point out those several things about what's available here within the Connect area, and also then find links to Vista's social media presence. So we have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter account called Vista Buzz, a YouTube channel, Flickr album where we have all of our hundreds and thousands of images of Vista-related projects. And you can share your own videos, pictures, stories, tweets with other Vistas and others in their service through our pages and our channels there. So that wraps it up for a quick look at what's available on the campus. And I'm going to turn back over to Sharon for our wrap-up.
Thank Andy. We had an opportunity to do this with Denise, and as soon as we can get the deck. Okay. All right. Time for more questions. Are there more questions out there that people need to ask, especially on the Vista campus? Suzette?
Sharon, I think at this point we maybe should just
move on.
To the
okay.
Poll. Yeah.
Well, you will notice that there is a poll again on your right. If you would take a few minutes to answer that poll, that would be very helpful, especially to Denise. So some next steps. First, we'd like you to join the Vista social networking platforms if you haven't already, and also post your pin on the map if you haven't done that already. You can bookmark some of the most important pages from the Vista campus. Take time to participate in the forums, either post a message or respond to a question. These are very good ways to connect with other Vistas, and the peer relationships are often built well this way. Look at the Vista campus calendar to find events and future training opportunities, and also our new page, the ongoing learning page that's on the front page of the Vista campus, will take you to the schedule for upcoming webinars. And finally, follow up on the information that you're going to receive in resource email that will be coming to you. Yes?
We do have a question from Daniel Warner.
I think we can take one question, yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Daniel.
Hi, yeah, I think this question, I actually saw someone else was kind of asking the same question on the chat, but basically my question is if you haven't done all that you should in terms of getting in touch with people right after you meet them, getting them, linking into them right after you meet them, any suggestions you have for kind of getting back in touch with those people and making them connections and how to approach that?
I'm guessing this one's for me, not Vista Campus. You would be amazed. I get this question a lot. You'd be amazed by, you think, oh my God, it's been 2 years or 2 months. And people, it doesn't affect them as much as you would think it does. I recommend at that point using a light touch and sometimes humor. I have certainly done that. listen, I've been doing this now for a long time, and I still forget to follow up with people, and I still neglect some of my networks at times. And so I'll send a note and be like, oh my gosh, I meant to email you 2 months ago. I can't believe I dropped the ball on this. Like, what is wrong with me? Like, joking around, I might say, it's been a really busy summer. You could use, you've gone through this big transition. For all of you, you can talk about, between graduating from school and starting Vista, time has gotten away from me. I know I meant to follow up with you then. So if it's someone that's a couple months, if it's someone that's a couple years, you can just say, gosh, I was looking through this and I came across your name. I was thinking of you, just wondering how you've been, really curious. Because, I think Facebook kind of set the trend for this in this stage with people reconnecting. I heard from people recently that I went to kindergarten with. So it's more of the norm now for people to get back in touch, and people aren't surprised with it. So I think just making, and that's the whole thing with networking to me, and I'm glad you give me an opportunity to say this, is it is really important, but you have fun with it. It shouldn't feel so onerous and like, oh my God, like if you have a natural curiosity and excitement for getting to know somebody, so when you send those emails out to people or you're getting in touch with them via phone or any other means, just enjoy it and like have fun with it and say like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you since we both had really bad haircuts in the 7th grade, saw that you were working at this national organization, would love to hear more about your work, making that connection. It's easier than you would think, and don't let the time having passed for so long stop you from making that connection. I would be so surprised if anybody was turned off because you had taken, whether it's 2 months to follow up to a business card or 20 years to follow up with someone you knew from years ago.
All right, a lot.
Thanks very much, everyone, for attending this webinar and for participating. We will get the follow-up materials out to you probably tomorrow. If you have further questions for us, or if you have more information, or you need more information, you can contact us at the campus at campaignconsultation.com. Our next webinar is going to be getting the most from your AmeriCorps healthcare coverage, and that will be on Wednesday, October 17th at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, I guess Eastern Time by that time. To go to register it, you can find it on the Vista events calendar on the front page of the Vista homepage, Vista's homepage, or you can check out the ongoing learning page, also found, or is a button to it on the front page of the Vista campus. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention.
Thank you. This concludes today's conference call. You may now disconnect.